Hello everyone, Infosec Pandey here, and welcome back to day 28 of the SOC 100 Days Learning Challenge. And by now, you are becoming a seasoned log analyzer. I mean, you have been spotting anomalies like a pro, but today we are going to take it up a notch. So, we are talking about building detection rules based on logs. So that's right. Time to create some magic where we can automatically flag suspicious behavior without having to sift through hundreds of log manually. So whether you are working with a security information and event management, I mean the SIEM system, or a custom scripts. So building detection rule is one of the most powerful way to automate your security monitoring and help catch attacker in the act. So let's jump into how you can build detection rule that are both effective and customizable. So what we will cover in this video, so we are going to cover the introduction, what is detection rule, why detection rule is important, and some advanced detection rule with steps and examples. So this is going to be a fun today, and then summary. All right, so what is a detection rule? So before we go all in, let's quickly define what we are working with. A detection rule is a set of conditions that identifies malicious or suspicious activities within your logs. All right, so these rules are designed to automatically trigger alert when certain pattern or behavior, I mean the anomalies, are detected. So instead of manually combining through logs like a detective, a rule will catch suspicious activity and send you a heads up. So think of it as your own personal watchdog constantly sniffing out bad behavior while you sip your coffee. So here we have some steps. So step number one, identify what you want to detect. So the first step to building a solid detection rule is knowing what you are looking for. So there are countless things to detect in the log, but you don't want to get overwhelmed by setting up rule for every possible scenario, right? Think about the high risk activity that are most likely to indicate an attack or compromise. So here are some examples you can consider while creating a high risk activity alert or detection rule. So number one is the failed login. So failed login attempt from unusual locations. So that could be a brute force attack, right? And then login from unusual geographies. So multiple login failure in a short time period. That could be a credential stuffing attempt. Privilege escalation. So like user executing sudo commands or changing permission unexpectedly. And then lateral movement. So lateral movement is also very important, like accessing sensitive file or suddenly accessing many files or creating admin user or accessing multiple systems. Then large outbound traffic like exfiltration, so outbound traffic to an untrusted IP address for data exfiltration. So once you have identified a high risk activity, you can build a detection rule around that. So let's say you are concerned about failed login. All right, so step number two. So step number two is for gather the logs you need or the gather relevant log. So in order to build an effective rule, you need to gather the logs that provide the information you need. So in the real world scenario, you might have logs coming from authentication like var log, authentication log, or some Windows event like 4624 or 4625, and then system logs like file access, service start, stop event, etc. Then network log. So network logs are very important to spot unusual outbound traffic, connections, etc. And then application log. So if a specific application is critical, monitoring its log for anomalies is key. So here we have some sample log for failed login. So we might use log like that. So you can see we have some timestamp here, then error detail, and then we have the actual message failed login attempt from the IP address and also the user detail we have. So user is admin. So it's a high risky activity, right? So in this case, failed login attempt are clearly showing up, and we might want to create a rule to catch these. Then step number 3, so define a detection criteria. So now it's time to get into the nitty gritty of actual building the detection rule. So the main idea is to identify the pattern in the log that indicates something suspicious. So the criteria are often a combine of threshold, that set limit on how many failed login attempt or any other suspicious activity should occur within a given time period. Then pattern, so look for certain keywords like failed login attempt or error and correlate them with the other logs like IP address or usernames. Then time window is very important. So define the time window or time frame during which multiple failed login attempt are considered suspicious. So if it is an odd hour, then definitely it is suspicious, right? So for example, we will create a rule failed login attempt. So the objective will be detect when there are more than 5 failed login attempt from same IP address within a 10-minute window. So this could indicate a brute force attack, right? So same IP within 10 minutes, and the detection logic will consider the source of the authentication log, then condition would be the failed login attempt, and then threshold would be more than 5 failed login attempt, and time frame will be within 10 minutes. So the rule will be search for log containing the keyword failed login attempt and then group those logs by IP address and then count how many failed login attempt occurred within 10-minute window. So if more than 5 attempts are detected with the same IP, so this is going to trigger an alert. So here we have pseudocode. So here you can see select account as failed login attempt from a authentication log where event type is failed login attempt, and then the time stamp will be more than or equal to now and interval 10 minute, I mean from now to next 10 minute, and then group by source IP which having failed attempt more than 5. So this rule would trigger an alert if more than 5 login attempt from the same IP address happen in under 10 minutes. Hope you understand the logic. So if you have any question or doubt, just put your comment in the comment box. Then step number 4, so test your detection rule. So testing detection rule is very important, guys. So if you create any rule, test it first before moving it to production. So don't just set the rule and forget about it. Test it to make sure it works properly. So here are a few ways you can test your detection rule. So you can simulate the activity. For example, run a brute force attack, so in a safe test environment to ensure that the rule catches it, and then use historical log, so you can verify it with sample logs. You can use historical log that contain the brute force attempt to see if the rule trigger as expected, and then fine tuning. So if the rule generates too many false positive, for example normal user who forget their password, or consider adjusting the threshold like increasing the threshold to 10 failed attempt in 15 minutes. So uh, the threshold depends on your organization requirement, so you can tune it as per your requirement. Then we have step number 5 here, so apply the detection rule in your SIEM. So once you have created and tested your rule, it is time to apply it in your security information and event management tool like Sentinel, QRadar, Splunk, etc. So here is how you would do this. For example, we are going to take the SPL query, which is a Splunk query. So in Splunk, you would create a saved search like this. So you will start with the indexer, which is authentication log, and then you are going to search the keyword failed login attempt, and then status count by source IP, where count is more than 5, and then this is the table you are going to create, I mean the columns in your log, source IP and count. So this Splunk search will automatically monitor the log for any IP address with more than 5 failed login attempt, and you can configure an alert to notify when this happens. Here is another example for ELK or watcher example. So this is going to apply to the Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. So in Elasticsearch, you can set up an alerting rule with watchers to detect failed login attempt. So here we have some criteria like trigger, schedule, and the interval will be 5 minutes. And then input is search, which is going to check the indices, the authentication log, and in the body of the log it is going to check the event type failed login attempt. Then it is going to aggregate the failed attempts and the source IP. If source IP size is 10, then it is going to aggregate again the failed count and the value count, and then the field is like event type, and then the action would be email admin. So this is going to trigger an alert as well as going to send an email to the admin at admin@example.com. And then subject will be brute force attempt detected, and the body contains multiple failed login attempt detected, and the IP address will be like this. So this is a little lengthy detection rule, but this is very good one. Next we have step number 6. So fine tune and repeat. So creating detection rule is not a one time job, it is an ongoing process. So as attackers evolve and find new ways to bypass security systems, you will need to tune your rules regularly, look for false positive, adjust threshold, and introduce new pattern to stay ahead of attackers. So threshold is too low equal to noisy alert, threshold is too high, which means you can slip the attacker. So you need to create some real logical rule which works for you. Then you can also add some exception list like your admin detail or your user detail which are expected to fail login. Then monitor false positive weekly, so you can create a report every week for the false positive alert, then tune it accordingly. So the pro SOC skill is continuous tuning, it's not a one time job. And also we have some bonus section here. So here are a few common detection rule ideas you can start with. So few common detection rule idea you can start with, like multiple failed login from different IP address within a short time frame. So this might indicate credential stuffing. Then also you can create the unusual login hours alert, like alert if an employee logs in at 3 a.m. when they usually log in at 9 a.m. New user creation event also very important. So alert if a new user is created outside business hours or by an unexpected admin account, and also sudden increase in outbound traffic. So alert if there is a spike in outbound data that looks like it's being exfiltrated. So here we have some example rules that you can learn here. So the first one is detecting privilege escalation attempt, and the objective is detect when a user escalate privilege when command like sudo to execute administrative task, especially when it is unusual or unauthorized. So here we have a log, so you can see we have timestamp, then time, and the event detail is info. So user is admin who executed sudo command. So sudo command is a root user command which is very powerful, and the command is sudo su, and then sudo chmod 777 etc pass wd. So detection logic could be look for the condition, so like sudo command execution or similar privilege escalation. Then also check for the pattern here. So sudo chmod is a pattern here. So sudo su, sudo chmod, or sudo rm commands, or any command that modifies system critical files. Then also check for the timestamp. So flag should trigger for user executing multiple sudo commands within a short period or at unusual time. So the rule trigger if a user executes sudo command outside of regular working hours, for example, after 8 p.m. or on the weekends, and trigger if multiple sudo commands are executed in quick succession, especially evolving system file like etc pass wd or etc shadow. So the example pseudocode will be select count from syslog, and then where the commands like sudo and then timestamp is from now to next 30 minute, and the count having is more than 2. So this rule will trigger an alert if a user executed more than 2 sudo commands involving system critical file in 30 minute. So if you have any question, just drop your comment in the comment box. All right, so next example rule we have detecting lateral movement. So the objective will be detect when a user is accessing system they should not normally be accessing. So this could be a common sign of lateral movement during a breach. So here we have some logs, we have a timestamp and the info, the SMB login pattern from 192.168.1.2 to this system, and user is system, and the another log says accessing IP from this system to this system, and again from 192.168.1.4 to 5. So you can see a pattern here. First the user logged in on 1.2, then 1.3, then from 1.3 to 1.4, and then 1.4 to 1.5, right? So you can create a condition, look for SMB login between internal system and the pattern, a system account or an administrative account performing multiple SMB login attempt across different machine in a short time window. And time frame is also very important here. So suspicious if the SMB login happen rapidly across machines, or if access happens outside business hours. So the rule you can create or trigger an alert if an administrative account like system or admin log into multiple machine in quick succession, like within 10 minutes, or detect a lateral movement when a user log in more than 3 machine within 15 minutes and it is not typical for their role. So this log have all the logic and details which can help in creating the detection rule. So the pseudo code would be select count from SMB log where user in system or admin. So this is the user detail. You can put your own user detail or system detail here, and timestamp from now to next 10 minutes and having count more than 3. So this rule will detect if an administrative account tries to access more than 3 systems or 3 machines within 10 minutes. Then the next rule we have data exfiltration via HTTP post. So the objective is detect when large file are being uploaded to external server, which is a common method for data exfiltration. So here we have a log, the timestamp info, then HTTP post, and the URL path. So it is uploading.php file equal to confidential.zip, and the user is admin, and the size is 12 MB. And the another log says the user is admin and the file size is 20 MB. So the detection logic would be here the condition. So look for the post attempt, post request that uploaded file, and then pattern. So file large than a certain threshold like 10 MB or 20 MB or 50 MB, particularly to a external IP address. And then time frame, so multiple large file uploaded within a short period, that could indicate an exfiltration attempt. So the rule we can create or look for trigger an alert when a user upload file larger than 10 MB to an external server, especially multiple file in a short time period, and then flag upload during non-business hours from unusual sources. So the pseudo code would be select a sum of the file size from HTTP log where the request type will be post. So post is help identifying the uploading activity and the file size is more than 10 MB and having some file size is more than 30 MB. So this rule will detect when a user upload more than 30 MB of data in 1 hour, which could be indicative of exfiltration. Next rule we have anomalous login times. So the objective is detect when user login at times that are unusual for them. So this is particularly useful for spotting account compromises. And the log we have here is info user John Doe logged in from IP, and then another user John Doe logged in from this IP. So timestamp is key here. So the detection logic is like condition, look for login that occur outside regular working hour. And the pattern, if a user typically log in between 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., login in at 3 a.m. could be a sign of compromise, right? So time stamp or time frame is very important here. And you can flag login outside of typical business hours. And the rule could be set the detection threshold to flag login occurring between midnight and 5 a.m., as these are likely unusual hours, right? And you can trigger an alert if user who usually log in during business hours log in outside of their times. So the pseudocode would be here, select count from auth where hour from timestamp is less than 6 and having count is 1. So this rule will trigger an alert if the user John Doe login in at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m., which is unusual for this user. So next rule example, we have outbound traffic spike. So the objective here is detect when there is an unusually high amount of traffic leaving your network, which could indicate data exfiltration. And log we have timestamp, time, then info, and then outbound traffic 500 MB to this IP from this IP. So the detection logic could be the condition. So condition is detect sudden spike in outbound traffic, especially to unfamiliar or untrusted IP address. And the pattern will be large file transfer, such as anything greater than 100 MB per session to exfiltrate destination, and then time frames. So detect a surge in traffic over a 10-minute window, which might indicate an exfiltration attempt. So the rule you can create, so you can trigger an alert if there is more than 1 GB of outbound traffic in an external IP address within 10 minutes, and set a threshold for outbound traffic to unusual or unknown external IP address. And here we have a small pseudocode. So select some bytes sent from network log, having some byte is more than 1 GB. So this rule will flag when an internal system send more than 1 GB of data to an untrusted IP address within 10 minutes. And the last rule example we have suspicious DNS queries, and the objective is detect DNS tunneling or data exfiltration attempt via DNS request. And the log here we have, this DNS query is going to domainexample.com and size is 3500 byte, and again the size is 3600 byte, and user is admin here. So condition we can use here, look for unusual large DNS queries, and then DNS queries that exceed a specific size like 1000 byte or more, and then timestamp like multiple large DNS query from same source in a short period, like within 5 minutes. And the rule we can create, we can trigger an alert if DNS query are larger than 1000 byte, and then multiple queries or DNS queries over 1000 bytes from the same user or IP within a short time frame. And the example pseudocode will be select count from DNS log, where the query size is 1000, and then having count is more than 3. So this rule flags multiple large DNS queries from the same user in under 5 minutes, which could indicate DNS tunneling. All right, so today we have learned how to identify detection need, how to write detection logic, applying rule in SIEM like Splunk or ELK, and testing the rule and tuning the rule, and then 6 advanced detection example. And the skill we have unlocked today, you can now build some custom SOC detection rule by seeing some raw log. And building detection rule based on log can be one of the most powerful ways to detect security incidents early. So it is like setting up an automated watchdog that never sleeps. But remember, the key is to be proactive, test your rule, and refine them over time to make sure you are detecting the real threat while minimizing false alarms. So go ahead, build your rules, monitor your network, and catch those attackers in their tracks. So if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe, and if you have any question related to detection rule or SOC, just drop them in the comment.